Hi everybody. Today we are going to start talking about reinforcement and how to really use it as effectively as possible. Because there's actually a lot more to positive reinforcement than just giving our dogs a cookie. So today I'm going to start, over the next few weeks, we're going to talk about cleaning up our training and using positive reinforcement as effectively as possible to really push our training forward. Because positive reinforcement is one of those things that can either be really powerful or, if not used appropriately, kind of just, it doesn't feel as though it's working. So now that our training academy is up and I've got some things kind of lined up in my life and I'm not focused so much on the background work of trying to get the academy up and running, I'm getting back into training more of the dogs myself and getting back into my training. So I've been listening to a lot of podcasts and reading a lot of books again finally, because all of this stuff has been paused for the last few months as we've been really trying to get the academy up. And so it's really inspired me to clean up my own training, because I've seen myself become kind of a sloppier trainer. And so I want to clean up my own training, and I want to bring you guys into that and let you see some of that. So like I said, what we're going to start with today is reinforcement itself. And that is the process of positive reinforcement. So positive reinforcement is one of those things that we get hung up on for two reasons. One, we think about it as bribery or confuse it with bribery, or secondly, we think about it as a thing and not as an event or a process. So positive reinforcement is actually a process by which we all learn. And it's constantly happening whether we want it to or not, whether we use it on purpose or not. Positive reinforcement is constantly happening. So I was just listening to a podcast by Hannah Brannigan, and I'm actually going to put the link to her podcast in my show notes because I thought it was fantastic. And she actually said that she was talking about this same thing. And again, I always have my little outline so I don't forget to say important things. So she was talking about also how positive reinforcement is a process that is always happening. And she said it is the same as water. So water is going to flow downhill whether you believe in it or not. That's just how water works, right? That's how gravity works. Gravity pushes things downhill. Water is going to run downhill whether you believe in it or not. Positive reinforcement is exactly the same. Positive reinforcement is happening constantly whether we choose to believe in it and whether we choose to utilize it or not. And so what we can do is we can take a process that's going to happen anyway, and we can use that to our advantage. So reinforcement, it's happened constantly for me today. I've been reinforced consistently throughout the day. I put salt on my lunch. I was reinforced because it tasted better, right? I really like salt. I was reinforced for getting on this live video by having you guys show up. So reinforcement is constantly happening, and it is not to be confused with bribery. So reinforcement is a process that is going to create stronger behaviors. And so therefore it happens after the behavior itself. Bribery is what I did this morning when I was getting ready to leave for this call and one of my dogs wouldn't go in his crate. So I grabbed a cookie and I said, "Look, Epic, I've got a cookie, go in your kennel." Okay, that's bribery. What I did was bribe. I bribed Epic to go in his kennel. And it's not the end of the world. It's something I do with him occasionally, But what bribery in that instant did was not reinforce going in his kennel. It reinforced ignoring my cue to go in the kennel, because I asked him to go in his kennel and he continued to stare at me. I got out a dog treat and said, "Look at this, now get in your kennel." That's bribery. It's an attempt to reinforce a behavior that hasn't happened already. And what it does instead is reinforce whatever was happening when you pull out the treat. So bribery is very different than positive reinforcement. So positive reinforcement is defined by its, what it does to behavior. So positive reinforcement, by definition, makes a behavior happen more often. It makes a stronger behavior. It reinforces that behavior. It makes it stronger. It makes it happen more often. So that is the definition of positive reinforcement. It is not necessarily a thing. So again, we get caught up a lot because we think, oh, positive reinforcement is giving my dog a cookie for good behavior. It could be, but positive reinforcement is actually defined by its effect on the long-term behavior. So did giving your dog a cookie for sitting make him sit more often in the future? Did it create a stronger behavior that was more likely to happen in the future? If it didn't have any effect on your dog's future ability to sit, then it wasn't it wasn't positive reinforcement by definition. So the other thing then to think about naturally is, okay, well then if positive reinforcement, the definition of positive reinforcement is that it's something that makes a behavior happen more often. It makes it more likely to happen in the future. So the other thing to keep in mind is that reinforcement is very conditional and it's very individual. So every person and every dog, we have different things that we find reinforcing. And it's very conditional based on the environment. So if we look at playing in the kiddie pool and being sprayed with the hose as a potential consequence for behavior, as I was doing this yesterday, it's like 90 degrees with 100% humidity here. It's very hot and miserable. So I haven't been able to exercise the dogs much because it's just too hot. So yesterday we went out and played fetch with the kiddie pool and the hose running so that I could cool the dogs down. And one of my dogs loves getting in the kiddie pool. He loves being sprayed with the hose. You could reinforce any behavior by asking him to get in or allowing him to get in the kiddie pool or by spraying him in the face with the hose. And it wouldn't matter much when you did that unless it was very, very cold. So that's where we get into, reinforcement it's kind of conditional. So if it is, 5 degrees outside and snow and ice, he may not want to get in the kiddie pool. And then it is no longer a reinforcement, right? So then I have dog number 2 who hates water. She'll walk into a real pond, but she hates swimming, she hates getting in the kiddie pool, she hates being sprayed with the hose. So yesterday she was playing fetch, I needed to cool her down, I picked her up and I set her in the kiddie pool. That would have not been positive reinforcement, right? So if I had asked her to sit and then picked her up and put her in the kiddie pool, I would have effectively punished sitting on cue because I picked her up and I put her in the swimming pool, which is something that she doesn't apparently like. It doesn't increase her likelihood of doing a behavior in the future. And then I have dog number 3 who sometimes likes the water. So most days he only likes water because he can drink it. Yesterday it was very hot and very humid, and so he gets in the water and plays around in it. Now very daintily, okay, might I add. He's not a splasher really. He likes to walk around, play bow a little. He's not a big splasher. So for him, playing in the water is a very conditional behavior. It's something that happens only under the right set of conditions, which is generally when he's hot and when he's thirsty. If he's not hot and he's not thirsty, he's not going to get in the kiddie pool, and therefore I cannot use that as a reinforcer. Whereas dog number 1, who I said he loves it all the time he loves being sprayed in the face with hose, all the time he loves the kiddie pool. It doesn't matter if it's 50 degrees or 100 degrees, he likes playing in the kiddie pool. So I can probably use that as a reinforcement far more often for him than I can for Epic, my little guy who doesn't, he likes the water when it's hot, only when it's hot. So what that means is a couple of things, is that first of all, reinforcement is conditional, right? If your dog isn't hungry, food is not going to function as a reinforcer. If your dog is really tired, playing fetch may not function as a reinforcer. If your dog is really cold, being sprayed in the face with a hose is maybe not going to function as a reinforcer. So it's conditional, okay? I know that if I'm really full, you can't reinforce me by handing me food because I'm not hungry. Now, it's also relative to the individual. So some dogs are going to find being sprayed in the face with a hose very reinforcing. Some are going to find it very punishing. So while one dog may love it, one dog hates it. So we don't get to decide, well, I tried reinforcement and it didn't work. Okay, by definition, positive reinforcement works. So if what you did didn't work, then it wasn't positive reinforcement. And the same goes for punishment. If you tried punishing a behavior and the behavior didn't decrease over the long term, then it wasn't punishment. So reinforcement is defined by its long-term effect on behavior. If the behavior you're reinforcing isn't increasing over the long term, then it is not being reinforced. And so that's where we really have to start when we start talking about reinforcement, is that what it is, and that it's conditional, and that it's individual, and that it is a process. It is not just handing a treat. So what we're going to get into in the next few lives is the whole reinforcement process, the whole reinforcement cycle. A lot of people call it loopy training. There's a whole loop that training goes through. And that's what we're going to be getting into next. So it's not just about handing your dog a treat. It is about using the correct marker, having the correct mechanics, using the right reinforcer, having a whole reinforcement process. That's what makes the difference between a dog who will or will not, doesn't learn with positive reinforcement and a dog who does. And I put that in quotes because all dogs learn through positive reinforcement. You just have to learn how to harness it correctly. So when we talk about, using a marker, we're going to talk about using cleaner mechanics. We're going to talk about how to choose a reinforcer, and we're going to talk about the reinforcement process itself. Where do you deliver the reinforcement? How do you deliver the reinforcer? How do you set your dog up for a next, how do you set your dog up for the next rep? Okay, these are all things that when we start to think about, we can really then start to harness reinforcement and use it to its biggest, most fullest potential. So when you watch a really, really talented trainer train, somebody like Hannah Brannigan or Laura Monaco Torelli, or just tons of these really, really talented trainers, it isn't about the treat, it's about the entire picture. They use their markers beautifully. They have clean mechanics, meaning their dog knows where the treat is going to appear. Their hands aren't moving much. And we're going to get into all of that stuff. And I'm going to start to show you some videos because a lot of this stuff is stuff that I have found myself getting sloppy with over the last few months because I've been really busy. And honestly, a lot of dogs let us get away with sloppy training. They fill in the gaps for us. Other species don't do that. If you want to be a really fantastic trainer, work with species that aren't dogs. Because dogs will fill in the gaps for you. And something like a cat or a chicken or a goat, they're not going to fill in the gaps for you. They're just going to follow the reinforcement. So what we're going to start talking about next week is the whole reinforcement cycle and or reinforcement process, however you want to call it, and how to really, really harness that. So we're going to start talking about how to choose a reinforcer, and we're going to talk about how to use that reinforcer as effectively as possible by having a process that's involved with that. So think about how you're using reinforcement now. Think about what things your dog finds reinforcing, because that's going to help you as we move through the next handful of videos. So what I want, if I'm going to assign you homework for this live video, then it would be to write down all of the things that your dog finds reinforcing, meaning all of the things that your dog enjoys doing, things that he likes to do. Does he like to sniff the grass? Does he like to eat treats? Does he prefer ham over cheese? All of that stuff, because one of the first things you need to do if we're going to really harness positive reinforcement is we need to choose our reinforcers. So I want you guys to start thinking about what reinforcers you're currently using with your dog, what reinforcers you'd like to use with your dog, and we're going to start talking about how to do that next week. And I'm hoping to start including some more videos of me training the dogs as well, so that you can see some of these mechanics and these reinforcement processes, because I am determined to clean up my own training. I'm on a mission to be a cleaner, more efficient trainer. So I have outlined a whole training plan for myself. So I'm going to walk you guys through all of that throughout these videos. So I will see you guys next week. If you found this video helpful, make sure to like it and share it anywhere that other owner trainers might find it helpful. This afternoon, the link to the show notes will be up with some other fantastic resources for choosing reinforcement and things like that, such as Hannah Brannigan's podcast, which I cannot speak highly enough about. So like I said, if you enjoyed this video, like it, share it anywhere that other owner trainers might find it helpful, because next week we are going to start really diving, now that we've talked about what positive reinforcement is, what the process is, that reinforcement is a process by which we all learn. Next week we're going to start getting into the nitty-gritty. Okay, positive reinforcement's great in theory, but how do we actually apply it? That's what we're going to start doing next week, and I'm going to use myself as the guinea pig. So I will see you guys next week, and let us know if you have any questions in the comments, because even if you're watching the replay, we will still answer them for you. See you later.